Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. This episode's amazing guest is Simon Webb from the YouTube channel History Debunked. I first came across History Debunked about 2 years ago watching YouTube, and like it does, it recommends different videos. And once one popped up from Simon about Mary Seacole. And I looked at it and thought, oh, I know about Mary Seacole. I did that in school, and I'm 54, so we're looking at, 45, 40 years ago. At one point, they almost changed the name of my school, my secondary school, to Mary Seacole, and they gave the kids a vote on it, and no one voted for it. But we did lessons on that, and we were told about how she was the Black Florence Nightingale and how she would have been as famous as Florence Nightingale apart from racism and all this wonderful work she did. And then I watched Simon's video, which basically said, none of that's true. And I thought, oh, is he one of those YouTube nutcases who just talks about rubbish? And that triggered me to go, I need to research this. I did took me 10 minutes, bit of research, and it turned out he was completely correct. She's wrote a book. Mary Seacole wrote her own book. And in that, she, she was a businesswoman. She was an entrepreneur. She wasn't a nurse. She didn't set up hospitals, but the crazy far left lunatics and race baiters have turned her into a hero. So when I watched that video, which I really enjoyed, I then emailed Simon and said, thank you for doing that. I've educated myself a bit more. And unlike most people, he emailed back going, oh, thanks, Nick. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So that was the first time I'd ever really heard about and spoke to Simon. Now, what we don't know about Simon, he's an author. He's wrote dozens and dozens of books, some on history, and some surprisingly on cowboys and westerns, which are obviously novels. So he's an educated man. He's a writer, and he set a channel up. So first of all, let me welcome Simon Webb to the podcast. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you. Hello there.
Um, I don't know. Do you remember when I emailed you about Mary Seacole, or do you get that
Sure.
many emails you just don't
No,
remember?
no, no, I remember perfectly well.
Oh no, fantastic! I wasn't sure if you get like a million emails every month, and it's
I
like,
get lots of emails, but I've got fairly sharp memory still.
right, good. I love your channel. I mean, I'm not just saying that. I think you've hit a real good niche there. Short videos, 5, 6, 7 minutes long, which everyone's got time to watch. There's lots of videos out there for 1 hour, and I want to watch them, and some of them I do, but they always fall off as well because it's like I ain't got that hour. But yours are a nice time. You talk about some very, what we would say today, controversial topics, but you talk about them in a very sensible, grown up, mature way. And I like that because there shouldn't be any topics we shouldn't be able to discuss and talk about. Now, that doesn't mean you're right. You could be wrong in lots of things you say and lots of things how you present that information, but that's not the point. The point is we should be able to have those discussions so other people then can contact you and say, I'm sorry, Mr. Webb, you've misrepresented these facts because have you seen this? Have you seen that? And then you can look at that and either go, no, you've misunderstood that. That's rubbish. Or you may turn around and say, which I do every now and again, thank you for that. I didn't know that. And now I'm a little bit better than I was yesterday because I have some better information. Do you get much of that?
Yeah, of course. I'm sure I'm wrong a lot of the time. Most of us are. However strongly we hold views and we think that we've come to those views rationally, a lot of the time we base our views on things that we might have learned something 50 years ago when we were kids and not bothered to examine it again and just hung on to that view because it's easier to hold. It might be completely wrong. So, yes, I'm quite perfectly aware that a lot of what I say is almost certainly wrong or incorrect. It's part of human nature to be wrong like that.
Yep. And it's also part of history. The best scientists in the world 20 years ago, today were wrong in almost everything they thought they knew because times have moved on and we realized that they were wrong. It wasn't that long ago we all thought the atom was the smallest thing in the universe until someone split it in two and went, oh, what's all this crap inside here? So it wasn't the smallest thing in the universe. So things move on. Now, let's talk about your channel. You talk about lots of controversial stuff. You talk about LGBT stuff. You talk about race. You talk about religion. Anything we think is controversial, you talk about on your channel. How did you start your channel? Why did you start it? Was it purely as a bit of fun, or did you have an agenda? Not as A negative agenda, but an agenda as in, I just want to get information out there. Why did you do it?
A young person who was studying film and was trying to get into the world of films and producing documentaries contacted me. He'd read one of my books and he asked whether or not I wanted to help set up a YouTube channel, and he would do the filming and I could talk about various topics, from one of my books, myths from history. So I did that. And then he used that as a kind of showpiece to demonstrate his skills in filming and photography. But then he lost interest in it. And I started making videos on my own account just with a cheap video camera I had. And I just began talking to camera about things that I found interesting, particularly the sort of things that I couldn't generally say in public. Because if you start reminiscing in public or talking in public about racism or about homosexuality, you're soon going to find people looking at you as though you're not using the right deodorant. Many topics are taboo. And I just wanted to talk about things that I was interested in, that I'd noticed that I couldn't say in real life.
No, excellent. And how was your channel received at the beginning? Because obviously at the beginning you had no followers. You was a nobody. For people who don't know about YouTube, it takes a long time to build up an audience, a following. I mean, at the moment now you've got 180,000 subscribers, which is basically followers of your channel. That's a lot in the grand scheme of things. It's a lot. How was you accepted at the beginning? And how did your channel grow, or was it just a natural progression?
It grew without any real effort on my part. I just started making videos, and I found that most days I had something interesting to say, or I found it interesting, and apparently other people did as well, sometimes just from things I saw in the newspaper. I think one of the main attractions is that I never delete comments and there's no moderation. And anybody can say anything they want in the comments. A lot of people call me an idiot, they're abusive. That's fine. Um, it's an attraction. Most places you go to on YouTube, when you start commenting, if you're not careful, the comments will be deleted. But I run what is in effect an open forum. Anybody can say anything at all.
So if comments disappear, I've seen you mention it several times. If comments disappear from your channel, it's because of YouTube.
It's YouTube. Yeah, yeah, they have algorithms and they spot particular words. They're not very keen on seeing the word Jew. They're not very keen on seeing the word race. And those algorithms will pick up on comments and delete them. It's nothing to do with me.
Mm. How's YouTube been with you and your channel? Because YouTube is probably a California-based large tech company. They're very woke. They're very progressive. I got kicked off Twitter a few months ago, permanently banned. Never had a warning, straight to permanent ban because I criticised a woman who sold her story to the Daily Mail. So this wasn't an average woman someone was talking about. I criticised a woman who'd sold her story to the Daily Mail. So she should be fair game for a certain amount of criticism if you feel she deserves criticism. She's put herself there. So how's YouTube been with you?
Well, they banned me a few times and I've had videos deleted by them, but not for over a year now, which is good. They were very touchy during the pandemic about what they call medical misinformation. So I made a video in which all I did was I quoted from the British Medical Journal going back a few years about things that they said about masks and so on. And that was the last time I got banned because YouTube were very, very touchy about that. They didn't want people to say any criticism of the measures about COVID. But since then, that was a little over a year ago. I haven't had any trouble with them.
And is that because they're getting used to you, or is that because you're learning how to play the game better?
I choose my words carefully, and I have a fair idea now of what is going to trigger YouTube, and I avoid saying things that are going to get me banned.
Right, and what are those things? So from an experienced YouTuber to an amateur starting off YouTuber, what's one or two pieces of advice you would give me to watch out for?
You cannot. There's if you look at the community guidelines that YouTube operate by, they give specific examples of things you can't say. So, for example, you cannot say that the skulls of Africans tend to be smaller than the skulls of Europeans, although it happens to be true. And, it doesn't necessarily equate to intelligence. But the fact is that the volume of the skull of a typical Bantu is lower than the volume of the skull of a typical European. That is a specific thing that YouTube will ban you for. That specifically, they mention that as an example of hate speech. So really, you have to go through the community guidelines and look at them and see exactly what it is that YouTube are likely to object to.
That's something I must do today then, is because like all these things you get sent, it's like you look at it and you go, I'm not reading all that rubbish, but I suppose I must, because there might be something in there that
There are things in there that you're going to say at some point that the YouTube are going to suspend you for.
This is a silly question. Do you love, not love, it might be a strange word, but do you really enjoy having this channel?
Yeah, of course I enjoy it. It's good. I'm not the world's most sociable person in real life, and it gives me a chance to interact with people and to connect with people. It's a way of getting into the world. When you reach a certain age, there is a tendency to become more closed in and more concerned only with your immediate interests or with your immediate family. This is a way that I interact with the whole world.
Yeah, as you get older, and it is harder to find, it's not find, it's harder to make quality friends. Because when I think of my friends, I still, the few friends I've still got, they were made in my teens. And I've still got, I've got some friends now who I've made over the last couple of years, but the bonds are not the same as those friends I made when I was 18, 19, and we were trying to get into nightclubs and we're trying to chase women. We've got a history together. And even though our lives have gone completely separate ways, and if we met now as strangers, we wouldn't be friends because we've got nothing in common. But all we've got in common is that camaraderie from being teenagers.
That's absolutely right. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. I feel the same way.
So my next question is, because you talk about controversial topics, which shouldn't be controversial, they shouldn't be, but in the society we live in today, they are. What impact has that had on you? Because I remember, I think you've left now, but for many years, I've been watching you for about 2 years. For many years, you would mention every now and again of being in a college. You worked in a college. How you had this channel and worked in a college and never got fired, I've absolutely no idea. So how did that impact that? How does it impact, your mental health? Is it because you must get so much abuse and you don't even delete your comments? And I know what it's like getting some negative comments and attacks. And even though we all go, idiot, idiot, at some level, I mean, I think I'm very mentally tough, but even they still plant seeds. They're still there, and I hate myself for letting it affect me, but they do. How do you cope with all that?
Because most of the comments that are made about me, for example, that I'm an agent of the Israeli Secret Service. If you look at the comments on my thing, an awful lot of people have got Jews on the brain, and they've convinced themselves that I am a Jew and that I'm secretly working on behalf of the elders of the protocols of Zion, and all the rest of it. Obviously, I know that's raving mad, so it just makes me laugh. Sometimes people make up untruthful stories about me. There's a channel devoted to destroying me. And there's a man on there that's come up with the idea that I'm dying of AIDS and that I've got AIDS-related dementia. Now, I'm finding this funny. I used to go on there and make jokes, but it wound people up so much, I stopped doing it. It wasn't worth it, really. Obviously, people can say foolish things about me, and I'd ignore them. That's nothing. Sometimes people say things that are quite sharp and quite to the point, though. And at that point, I might think about myself. I might think, well, have they got a point here? Am I being this or am I being that? So I don't resent that if people point out something about me that's undesirable or unlikable. I'll give it some thought.
Yeah, and I'm exactly the same with that. There's many times people will it might be a slightly negative comment. They're not being rude. They're not being, nasty. But you can read tone into text. So I'm putting a tone in there that they may not be meaning, but you read it and you think, you you have got a little bit of a point, and the fact I'm admitting you've got a little bit of a point, and I don't like the way you've worded that message, winds me up. And I've had to learn over several years now, probably from when I first started going on Twitter, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I'm still not the best at it, but I've had to learn sometimes to keep my mouth shut and not respond, because I say to people, it's a bit like walking down the street and you see a 45-year-old drunk mental man on the other side of the road, and he catches your eye and he starts screaming obscenities at you, and you just carry on walking by because you know he's crazy. You don't spend the rest of the day analysing what he was shouting at you, because you automatically reject it all as nutcase. So why do we give these people on social media more credit than they deserve sometimes? And I think it's because we're engaging with them, or we're engaging in the same platform as them. At some level, we feel we have a connection, or we feel they know us better than they really do, and it's some part of our social traits we have. Because if you lived in a tribe, it makes sense for you to take on board negativity from your tribal community, because if you upset them enough and you don't have a tribe, that means you die. And that's how we regulate our behavior and our comments, is by what other people say about us. But on social media, it's all warped on social media. They're not our friends, they're not our family, they're not our tribe, they're not our community. They're people from all over the world, and lots of them have got their own mental health problems.
Well, this is absolutely true, of course.
And I put myself in that category as well. I mean, I don't think I'm 100% mentally stable. Who is? So it's not like I'm just saying they're the nutcases and I'm not. I quite often put myself into that. So let's talk about your work at a college. How was you not fired?
It's really simple. Some of the people working there knew about. I mean, I didn't advertise the YouTube channel. Some people found it by their own volition. A couple of the lecturers there thought that it was really funny, and they used to tell me privately. They would say, "Oh, that was great," because I talked sometimes about the people at the college and the students there. A few of the students came across it as well. And what's surprising is that the people that are really critical of me do tend to be white rather than black, because the black students that came across it, they might have argued with me that I was wrong, but they also found it funny. It was the idea of an old guy going onto YouTube and saying stuff that they knew people said but never got to hear. And they thought I didn't get any animosity from anybody. None of the black students thought that there was anything at all wrong with what I was saying. And I might mention actually that I get emails from black people, from people in Nigeria, from Igbo people particularly, because I say, I have a sort of a thing. I've always got on well with Igbos. I get emails from black people. They might argue with what I'm saying. They're certainly not upset or offended by me, though. So I think it's nearly always white, particularly middle class left wing people, that find me offensive.
Yeah, and that doesn't surprise me at all. I've spent the last 20 years working on the streets on the inner city in Greater Manchester, working with kids. Top of my head, maybe half of them you'd say were black, Asian, non-white. Hardly any of them ever complain about racism. Hardly any of them. But then when I'm sat in, usually, well, not anymore, I'm persona non grata now. But when I used to be sat in council meetings or charity meetings about certain areas, all those white, university educated, middle class, lots of them southerners, so many people with the best jobs in Greater Manchester, and not even from the north, they're usually from down south and come up here for a better paid job. They would talk about racism, and the odd black person as well. But it's like, none of yous work front line. None of yous talk to anybody front line. You're making up problems that don't exist in society. They really are making it up to make themselves feel better and to keep their job and their pensions going.
And the problem is that it means that the real problems that young working class black people face are not being dealt with. When I actually talk to working class young black people, they want things like their concerns might be getting someone to look after their kids so they can go out in the evening. Their concern might be money, paying the rent. They've got loads and loads of concerns, things that they're actually worried about. Racism is right very low down on the list. They're more concerned with practical things. They want practical help. And by becoming, as you say, the white university types, that because they're so obsessed with dealing with racism, they neglect what black people are actually in need of.
And that's exactly why I got into trouble 2 years ago when I got sacked from the charity I founded. It ended well. I got my job back after 5 weeks. But Black Lives Matter had hit the headlines in riots in London, even though BBC said it was mostly peaceful. 27 officers didn't think so when they went to A&E. And I wrote an article based on Black Lives Matter on their website saying this is what they want. To me, they're a postmodern, neo-Marxist organisation, defund the police, get rid of the nuclear family, tear down capitalism. And what any of that's got to do with racism, I don't know. And the last half of my blog, I wrote about, based on my experience, if I wanted to improve the lives of black people in the UK, I'd do these things. I'd look at female genital mutilation much better because we ignore it because we're scared of being called racist. I would look at knife crime. Knife crime is the second biggest disgrace I think we have in our country at the moment. We allow young black men to die in our streets in pools of their own blood because nobody wants to tackle the issue because they're scared of being called racist. Anti-racism in this case kills young black men, and I've seen it so many times in Greater Manchester. So I talked about that, and in the end I ended the article by saying, and why don't we start building more houses, because that will improve the lives of everybody in the country, including black people, because we're running out of houses are unaffordable, rent's unaffordable. These are the things we need to be tackling, not racism per se. And every time I've spoken to a black person about racism who have said to me, oh, I've suffered from racism. Oh, well, can you give me an example? What is it exactly? And what they mean is hurty words. Somebody at some point said a hurty word. So you could call somebody a ginger bee or a fat bee or a black bee. The black bee is out of order. That's racism. Well, what about the ginger one, the fat one, the specky one? No, this isn't racism. This is antisocial behavior. This is calling someone a name, a childish name to get a reaction. But people now think anything like that now is racism, and it isn't racism. But that's what we're trying to deal with. And that's why some people are super, super sensitive on the ideas of racism. And let's be honest, lots of people are making a fortune out of this. And I loved the meme a few years ago or a year ago, Black Mansions Matter, because that's what the founders of Black Lives Matter seem to have done. They've made mansions matter now because they own that many.
Yes, the person in charge of Black Lives Matter in Bristol seems to be up on full charges at the moment. There's quite a few things like that going on.
It is. And what I don't like in those sort of cases is she came out of court. Obviously, let's say not been found guilty yet, but she has been charged. She comes out and she's hidden her whole face.
That's right, yeah, with a black bag over it.
Yeah. If I was innocent, this is just me. If I was innocent, I'd be walking out of court with no disguise on, my head held high, going, I have nothing to hide. And she may be innocent and she just may be under pressure and feel stressed to hide herself, but I wouldn't have done that. So I'm curious about what the verdict will be in that case, because yeah, you look at all the leaders in America, lots of them now have been arrested and prosecuted for fraud, rape, paedophilia, transporting women across state lines for prostitution, for gun crime. And these are the leaders in all the cities of Black Lives Matter. Not every leader, of course, but many of the leaders now just pure out and out criminals.
Yeah, the problem is also that a lot of white people have a kind of romanticized view of how black people are, and they regard them as being different. They regard them as being more honest and trustworthy than white people, which is absurd. If you give loads of money to a group of white people and you don't ask them to account for it, and you let them play fast and loose with it, they're going to steal a lot of that money. That's human nature. That happens all the time. The assumption is that if you give a load of money in that way to a group of black people, they will all be honest and scrupulous and ethical about how they deal with it. It's ridiculous. They're going to steal it just as much as white people are. It's really racism to assume that black people are going to be more honest and sort of reliable about money than anybody else. It's not true.
It's like criminality is a human trait. Every society in every country and every continent, a percentage of those people have a tendency to lean towards criminality.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen that in some of the residence groups I've worked with across Greater Manchester, usually run by middle-aged, white, retired women. Fraud there as well. So have you any plans for your channel? What's happening with you? I believe you're doing a series of documentaries maybe coming up. What does the future hold for you?
It's impossible to say what the future holds for me, really. I've got a book on slavery coming out at the end of March, Slavery in Africa, which is a neglected topic. So that will be coming out on the 30th of March. I'm always writing books. I've got dozens of books that I'm either writing or in the pipeline. And the YouTube channel, I think, will be carrying on as it is.
And you do about 3 videos
Three
a
a
day?
day. Yeah,
3 a
three a
day.
day.
That's a lot. And I just read something on your YouTube channel in the bio, you about doing some documentaries.
Yeah, I've been used as a consultant on documentaries, and there was a plan for an American to finance a series of documentaries, but I don't know how much that's going to come off. It's very difficult dealing with things like this when someone's in America and I'm here.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, and especially if it's to do with money as well. Yeah, they're going to work out what they're trying to get from it as well. No, absolutely fantastic. I recommend everybody to pause this video, go on YouTube, sign up and subscribe to Simon's YouTube channel called History Debunked. There's well over 1,000 videos on there now covering so many topics. And what I love about your videos is it's everything you say, you then back up in the description of the video. So you may talk about government stat is this, or there was a report 2 years ago on that. And you always say, and go into the description, read the report yourself. So we don't have to believe what you say because you put all your references in the description.
No, I don't want anybody to take my word for anything. I'm not some sort of guru or cult leader. I hope that people will treat what I say with skepticism. I hope that they will look into the matter and not even just check the references I give. I hope that they'll look into things themselves. I'm trying to jolt people a little bit to make them think, to make them ask themselves, why do I believe this? Simply because it's constantly said in the newspapers doesn't necessarily make it true.
Yeah, but that's what happens. That happened with me with Mary Seacole. I got told something at school and I believed it forever. And the amount of people I told that to in the last 40 years. Oh, Mary Seacole. Oh, did you know? And I came out with a load of lies that I was taught at school. And then, you look at other parts of history as well, which we believe for many years. I believe that we invited the Windrush generation to the UK to help us because we had no men working and we needed people working on the buses and in the NHS, and all that turned out to be false. Another good thing is the creation of GB News. I think GB News now has started making people think about, oh, this report is completely opposite to the report I've just heard on the BBC. So something might be wrong here. Maybe I need to do some research to find out who's writing this. We need
Except
people
a lot of people are boycotting GP News. Some of the media regard it as being neo-fascist. So they're saying that you cannot trust anything said on GP News. You probably know this.
Yeah. But that's exactly what the BBC and Sky would say because they're trying to keep their customers. That's all it is. It's like Pepsi and Coca-Cola fighting against each other about who's got the best cola, and that's what GB News is. The new people in the room, and they're trying to highlight the hypocrisy from some of these big organisations. But again, don't take my word for it. Start watching both channels, and then you can start working out what you think is the best channel to watch, or watch both of them, and then you can work out what you're going to take from that. But we need people to do a lot more critical thinking and to stop taking things at face value, because that's how propaganda works. And Nazi Germany shown us that, didn't they, in the
That's
30s?
absolutely right.
I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Simon, for coming along to Nick Talks. I thoroughly enjoyed chatting to you. I'd like to say I've wanted to talk to you for a while now. I love your channel, so well done on your channel. Anything else you want to say before we go?
No, thanks for inviting me onto your thing. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
That's fantastic. Hopefully I'll catch up with you soon.
Yep, take care now. Bye.
Thanks, Simon. Bye-bye.